Two children, same age, same amount of time in their day. One has to be dragged to the homework table, bribed, reminded, threatened. And even then, the moment you look away, the pencil goes down. The other one picks up a book nobody asked them to read, stays with a puzzle long after most kids would have quit, asks questions at dinner that catch you off guard. Same childhood, completely different relationship with learning. So what's the difference? Most parents assume it's personality. Some kids are just naturally curious. Some aren't. But here's what decades of research and one of the most studied education systems in the world actually show. The love of learning is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like every skill, it can be built deliberately from the very beginning. Here's the contrast that changes everything. In most Western homes, learning is motivated from the outside. Grades, sticker charts, screen time as a reward for finished homework. The implicit message the child receives, learning is the price you pay for the things you actually want. Japan operates on a completely different premise. In 2024, the National Center on Education and the Economy reported that 98% of Japanese 4- and 5-year-olds are already enrolled in early childhood education, ranking Japan in the global top 10 among OECD nations. But what happens inside those programs is not what most people expect. There are no academic drills, no flashcards, no pressure to read before first grade. Instead, there is play, there is reflection, there is struggle, and there is a very specific, very intentional set of beliefs about what a child actually needs in order to become someone who wants to learn. Let's go through them. The first belief, curiosity is already there. Your job is not to create it, it's to protect it. Doctors Richard Ryan and Edward D.C. at the University of Rochester have spent over 4 decades building what is now one of the most replicated frameworks in educational psychology, self-determination theory. Their finding, supported by hundreds of studies across cultures and age groups, is this. Children are born intrinsically motivated. Curiosity is not something you install in a child. It arrives factory-fitted. The infant who shakes everything, tastes everything, throws everything across the room, and then looks at you to see your reaction. That is the seeking brain doing exactly what it was designed to do. The problem is not that children stop being curious. The problem is that the systems around them, well-intentioned systems, accidentally switch it off. Ryan and Deci found that external rewards, pressure, and evaluation, especially when applied to activities a child already finds interesting, actually suppress intrinsic motivation over time. The dopaminergic system that drives curiosity and exploration begins to go quiet when the brain learns that the point of an activity is to earn something external, not to experience the activity itself. In other words, the sticker chart doesn't just fail to build love of learning, it can actively undo it. Japanese early childhood education operates as if it already knows this. The yochien, the Japanese kindergarten, is deliberately not academic. It is structured to protect the child's natural drive to explore while it is still intact. Because here is the truth most parents aren't told. The window where curiosity is easiest to protect is early, and the window where it is easiest to accidentally extinguish is exactly the same. The second belief, how you praise matters more than how much you praise. Dr. Carol Dweck of Stanford University conducted a study with children between the ages of 4 and 12 that became one of the most cited experiments in developmental psychology. She gave children a series of puzzles. After the first round, she praised half of them for their ability. "Wow, you must be really smart." She praised the other half for their process. "Wow, you must have tried really hard." Then she offered both groups a choice, an easier puzzle or a harder one. The children praised for being smart chose the easier puzzle. Because smart children don't take risks. If you fail the hard puzzle, you stop being smart. The children praised for their process chose the harder one. Because trying hard children aren't afraid of difficulty. Difficulty is just the next step in trying. Here is the finding that should stop every parent cold. Dweck then looked at mothers' praise patterns with their babies at ages 1, 2, and 3. The mothers who consistently used process praise, praising the attempt, the strategy, the persistence, raised children who, 5 years later in 2nd grade, showed measurably higher growth mindset scores and greater desire for challenge. The praise you give your toddler today is still shaping how they respond to difficulty at age 7. Japanese parenting instinctively reflects this. The cultural emphasis is not on the result, the grade, the prize, the ranking. It is on effort, persistence, and improvement, not as a consolation for failure, as the actual definition of success. The word Japanese educators use for this orientation is not complicated. They simply call it gambate. Do your best, keep trying. Not be the best, not win, keep trying. The third belief, struggle is not a problem to solve. It is the lesson itself. And this is where Japan introduces a concept that most Western parents have never heard, and that most Western instincts actively resist. It is called gaman, pronounced gaman. A 2024 study by researchers Izumi Taylor, Lin, and Kaneda, published in the U.S.-China Education Review, examined how Japanese preschool teachers understand and teach gaman to children as young as 3 years old. Gaman translates roughly as enduring hardship with dignity. It is not suffering in silence. It is not giving up. It is the practiced capacity to stay with difficulty, to keep working, keep thinking, keep trying, without immediately reaching for rescue. The researchers found that Japanese teachers intentionally withhold help when a child is struggling with a task, not because they don't care, but because the struggle is the education. When a child sits with a difficult puzzle and resists the urge to give up, when they try one approach, then another, when they finally solve it with no adult doing it for them, something happens that no adult can give them from the outside. They learn, I can do hard things. And that belief, built through dozens of small moments of productive struggle, becomes the engine of everything that follows. Gammon is closely related to what the research calls productive struggle, the state of being challenged just beyond your current ability, where the brain is working at full stretch but not yet overwhelmed. Neuroscience calls this the optimal zone for learning. Japan calls it childhood. The contrast with most Western parenting is sharp. When a child struggles, the instinct is to help immediately, to explain, to simplify, to take the pencil and show them the message unintentionally delivered. This is too hard for you. You need me. Gammon delivers the opposite message, not through words, but through patient, watchful presence. This is hard. You can do it. I'm here. The fourth belief, mistakes are not the opposite of learning. They are the method. Here is where Japan introduces the concept that may be the most quietly radical of all. Hansei, pronounced Hansei, fanshing, means self-reflection, but not the vague, passive kind. Hansei is structured, habitual, and taught, beginning in Japanese preschools, as a fundamental life skill. A 2005 study by Taylor, Wang, and Ogawa examined Hansei among Japanese teachers, parents, and relatives of kindergartners. The finding that separated Japanese and American educators most clearly was this. American pre-service teachers describe reflection as a disposition, a quality some people have and others don't. Japanese pre-service teachers described it as a skill, something they had been taught since early childhood and practiced every day since. In Japanese schools, Hansei is built into the rhythms of the day. After an activity, children are guided through 3 questions. What happened? What could I do differently? What will I try next time? Not as punishment, not as shame, as standard operating procedure. The cultural phrase that underpins it, self-awareness, is the first step to improvement. And notice what Hansei does to mistakes. In most classrooms, and most homes, a mistake is an ending. Something to correct, move past, forget. In Japanese education, a mistake is a beginning. It is information. It is the thing you examine, understand, and carry forward. A child raised with Hansei does not fear being wrong. They have practiced, literally hundreds of times, the act of looking at what went wrong and asking, what does this teach me? That is not a personality trait. That is a trained reflex. And it produces something that no amount of external pressure can produce. A child who, when they hit a wall, doesn't panic, doesn't quit, doesn't wait for someone to rescue them. A child who gets curious about the wall. The fifth belief, the environment teaches, whether you design it or not. Here is where the contrast lands its hardest punch. External motivation, grades, rewards, pressure, requires someone to apply it. Someone has to enforce it, follow up on it, maintain it. The moment the parent or teacher steps away, the motivation steps away with them. Internal motivation requires none of that. Ryan and Desi's research showed that intrinsic motivation, once protected and developed, predicts learning outcomes not just in the classroom but in autonomous settings. Situations where no one is watching, no one is evaluating, no reward is waiting. A child who loves to learn will learn in a library with nobody around. A child who has only ever been externally motivated will stop the moment the external motivation does. This is the real test. And it is precisely the question Japanese educators have been asking for generations. Not, how do we make children perform? But, how do we raise children who learn even when we are not there? Hansei, gaman, process praise, protected curiosity. None of these require a special school or a different country. They require a shift in what you reward, in how you respond to struggle, in what you call success. Two children, same age, same amount of time. The difference between them is not intelligence, it is not luck, it is not personality. It is what happened in the early years, the small daily moments that either told a child learning is something done to you, or learning is something you do. One praise choice, one moment of staying patient while they struggle, one question asked at dinner instead of an answer given. That is where it starts. And once it starts, it does not stop. I'll see you in the next one.